Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Pharus Global Live at 5. My name is Brian Hartman, and we are live from Ferris Plaza headquarters, 1859 Southeast Port St. Lucie Boulevard in Port St. Lucie. We are here today on episode number 32. Wow, we're adding this up quickly. And today I am excited to have with us Andrea Cortissoz. Hope I got that right. It sounded like it was right. Co-founder of HR Soul. And today Andrea is presenting, this is very controversial, folks. Great minds don't think alike. Don't think alike. Powering your organization with cognitive diversity. Pharus Global, we are a ecosystem of companies helping businesses grow and medical practices grow to the point where they're ready to hopefully exit at some point in the future, or just prepare them to be able to hand them down to the next generation. Everything from financial management, bookkeeping, through we have payroll and PEO, and we do equity, and we do commercial funding, residential mortgages, insurance. We have full service IT, and actually we've just added Ferris Wealth Management and Medical Practice Management, billing and coding. You can see all of this at pharusglobal.com. And without further ado, I'm going to say this again. Andrea Cortissoz. Welcome her to the show, and there we are.
Hey everyone, how's everybody doing out there? I hope everybody's great. Thank you for that great setup, Brian. That's like putting the pressure on me now.
I love putting the pressure on. Love it, love it. So, first of all, I wanted to quickly give a shout out to our Yankees.
Yeah.
Everybody take a minute and say, "Let's go Yankees." I just had to do that. Had to do it.
I'm a New Yorker, so I have to love them, even though I love Tampa. I've always loved Tampa. They're actually my number one. Sorry, but they are.
Oh, we have to go now. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. Hopefully, if the Yankees win tonight, we'll be seeing Tampa in the next round. So it should be very interesting.
Not going to happen. Not gonna happen.
Well, we are excited. I know I am excited because we're going against the grain here, Andrea. We're talking about great minds don't think alike. How is that even remotely possible? What do you mean by that?
I know. Well, I actually am saying this. Great minds don't think alike. I'm not saying they don't think alike. Let's just preface this now. So
and then hold that thought for a quick second before we get to dive into that. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started in all of this.
So I am a career HR geek. I've been in HR since the early 90s. Yes, I'm dating myself. I'm 50 years old. Scary.
Can't be. It must be a mistake.
Good genetics. That's all I can say. So I started out in the early 90s in HR in various different industries and worked my way up as you traditionally did in the past. And about 16 years in, I thought, you know what? I need to shake this up a little. So we left our hometown of Toronto, where we had everything established, and moved ourselves to New York, lived in New York for 10 years and started consulting when I was in New York. And it was just by chance. I needed a green card. I was waiting for a green card, took a year, started consulting to Canadian companies that I had worked with, and boom, I loved it. I thought, wow, this is awesome. I can do this. So I took all of this knowledge and experience and best practices I had over the years and started to apply it to the consulting world. So it's kind of cool because I've been inside, sitting inside leadership roles in HR, working with the C-suite. And then I've also now been on the outside consulting. So I'm objective, neutral party. So it's very, very cool how that's transitioned. And we took our business from New York and started to ramp up in the South. And that was a phenomenal decision. I can't imagine being anywhere else right now. We are growing like crazy down here. So it was definitely a great move. So yes, I'm excited to bring this controversial topic to your world.
And plus, by coming down here, it might be a little bit warmer in the next couple of months than it would have been up north. No?
little bit, and I lived in Toronto for 30 years. So it was like, just a little bit warmer in New York. Nah, it's not warm enough. Let's go to Tampa. Now, where do we go next? That's the next question.
The only downside was you became a Tampa fan. I just don't. I don't know if I could live with that. Let's go Yankees. Did I mention that?
I'm like a three-way. I'm a Jays fan. I'm Yankees. I'm a Rays fan. It's absolutely terrifying. There's so much internal conflict going on in my head when I watch games.
Wow, that's a toughie. So Christina says, "Nice hat, Brian." Well, thank you. That is my girlfriend, right? Christina. She I turned her. I converted her into a Yankee fan.
Oh, awesome!
So thank you for that. And by the way, anybody who would like to ask Andrea questions as we go along, whether you're on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, drop them in the comments. Smash the like button everywhere and hit that bell on YouTube. So this way you can find out about upcoming shows. But drop those questions in and we'll be happy to answer them as we go. So getting back to, we set the stage and hopefully everybody's on the edge of their seat waiting to find out. So what do you mean great minds don't think alike? How can that be?
You heard that right. So, contrary to what we've been told or we've believed for just eons about surrounding yourself with like-minded people, that's going to generate the most success. Sure, you're the most comfortable with like-minded people. They look like you, they feel like you, they behave like you, they approach things the way you do. However, you're likely to not have the greatest level of success, or at least maximize and capitalize on the amount of success potential you can have when you don't do that, because you're missing out on a tremendous opportunity to see things differently, and that can stifle some creativity and innovation. So, it's kind of the definition of insanity. If you keep doing the same things over and over, you get the same results. Yeah. I say if you keep surrounding yourself by the same people over and over and over, you're going to get the same outcomes. So, it's time to shake it up. It's time to bring some new people to play in the sandbox with you and watch what happens.
You didn't mean this kind of shake it up?
Shake off the sand in the sandbox. And I have seen this directly in organizations that do this well. They've leveraged it, they harness it, and they use it to their advantage. It's a very, very different outcome. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But great question.
Awesome. I love that thought process of and the definition of insanity. It totally makes sense. If you don't get out of your shell, right, there's no way to grow, right?
Absolutely.
So let's really touch on that. So what exactly is cognitive diversity, and how does that play a role?
So, when you think about diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging, which has been a tremendous initiative and focus for organizations over the past few years, even more so, really, there's a huge missing piece of that puzzle, and that is what we call cognitive diversity. And really, cognitive diversity, just to kind of sum it up, is exactly what I started with. It's just diversity of perspectives, thoughts, approaches, personalities, styles, skill sets, experiences. This is cognitive diversity. And the most successful companies on the planet, your Googles, your Amazons, your Apples, they generate these deep levels of self-awareness, of awareness of self, and then awareness of others, and understanding and recognizing what those others look like and the differences that they bring that may not be visible. These things are within us, to leverage it. They train it, they coach it, they develop it in their leaders and their teams, and they've seen the direct success because of these approaches and this awareness. And you really can't have cognitive diversity if you don't have what's called psychological safety. And psychological safety is just, creating an environment or a relationship where people are going to feel safe to take those interpersonal risks, that they're going to be vulnerable in front of each other, and they're not going to have this underlying sort of pit in their stomach about doing that and what possibly could negatively occur because of me doing these things. So, that in essence really is what psychological safety is. And you cannot have cognitive diversity without creating and nurturing a culture of psychological safety.
So it's basically, again, it's coming out of your shell and it's feeling comfortable about overcoming your own fear.
Absolutely. Love over fear. That's our mantra here at HR Soul. Whenever we're tackling something, especially something out of our wheelhouse, or we're struggling with something that we're having some internal conflict over, we always choose love over fear. Don't be afraid. And that's a big part of fueling cognitive diversity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you just mentioned the name of your company. Share with us, how did you come up with the name HR Soul?
We get that question so many times, and so many people. It's great because we struggled over it. Actually, Paul, my business partner, came up with that. He and I talked about it a lot. And, over the years, we're both career HR people. We've been inside. We know what good looks like. And the soul of the organization is its people. And what we found over the years is that some organizations kind of lose their soul. They lose their way. They get so bogged down in rapid growth, policies, procedures, compliance, legal. It kind of crushes soul sometimes. It can. Mm-hmm. And it becomes what we call soul sucking. And we've seen that there's another way. It doesn't have to be that way. So our mission really is to bring the soul back to organizations. So it just came to us, HR Soul. Yeah, that's another.
And that's the SOUL, not the SOLE for people out there that are wondering, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
So to continue what we were talking about, cognitive diversity, mm-hmm. And the powering your organization with it, right? So why does it matter so much more now than ever before? What happened?
Mm-hmm. And it matters big time right now, and it matters even more now. So I'm going to kind of break it into two. Why does it matter, and why does it matter now even more than ever before? So, the most cognitively diverse organizations have truly put this at the forefront of their behaviors. And again, they've set the bar so incredibly high because of it, and it's yielded those results, as I mentioned. Anyone can do this. This is not rocket science, but it does take commitment, it takes dedication, it takes resources and the effort to do it, and the will to do it, and the want to do it. So really, why it matters, it can be a tremendous competitive advantage for you. It can really stand your organization out against the others in things like brand reputation, client satisfaction. I mean, it just goes on and on. Mm-hmm. It can strengthen your ability to attract and retain talent for exactly those reasons, because word gets around, people talk. We know we do a lot of candidate search for our clients, and we hear this all the time. Candidates sometimes say, I don't want to go to that organization. I feel like you don't belong there. That's what I've heard. So we get a lot of this feedback firsthand from candidates as well. So your ability to attract and retain talent can be tremendously strengthened when people feel like they're going into an environment where they can truly be their whole selves and welcomed and included. They're known to have the highest performing leaders, the highest levels of employee engagement, leading to higher productivity and revenue, performance overall. All of these things are metrics that have been studied, and there are correlations between cognitively diverse organizations and these performance metrics. Financial performance, operational productivity, innovation. So by creating this kind of healthy friction and diversity of thought and approach and experiences and skill sets, it brings new ideas to the table, and it nurtures and generates creative thinking naturally. So having this healthy friction fuels innovation. And Apple is known for this. I mean, look at Steve Jobs and what he had done originally with Apple. Talk about healthy friction, but he brought it to a tremendous level, and even carrying on from where he left off. Relationships. Think about the way you can strengthen relationships when you're allowing for these greater levels of trust, respect, and sharing by being vulnerable. That in itself elevates relationships to a whole different level. Agile learning, because if you're learning from other people and you're getting new ideas and thoughts and hearing what others have to say, it stretches your mind. It opens your thinking. So it creates an environment of agile learning. It also helps build commitment and buy-in and strengthening of your core purpose as an organization, because you're including so many stakeholders and diverse stakeholders in the process when you're designing and creating and thinking, that you're creating an environment where everybody feels like they have a voice. And you're going to naturally get more buy-in when people feel that they have a voice and they were able to say what they needed to say. Change adaptability. They're very, very quick to change, and they're faster to transition into change organizations that are cognitively diverse. Decision-making becomes a lot faster and a lot easier to come to decisions, because again, you're getting a wide range of perspectives and ideas, and you can get to those decisions a lot more quickly. And then navigating ambiguity is another huge one. And it's just weathering the storms that are going to come. These organizations can get through these storms much more easily and much more effectively when they're already cognitively diverse. It's just going to come with the territory naturally, because they do this all the time. It's just part of their DNA. Sure. And why does it matter more than ever? That's your second question. Really, it's the question in the question. Yeah. We are living, we like to use the term VUCA world, obviously, if you know, military too. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous.
Mm-hmm. All of the above.
We are increasingly in a VUCA world, especially what COVID has done. The pandemic has pushed us there. So organizations have to be dealing with ambiguity and complexity and making decisions faster and being much more agile. And if you're already in an environment where that is the norm, this is not going to be a big deal for those organizations. And they're the ones that are thriving through this pandemic. People are already burnt out. This is another reason to have a cognitively diverse organization where people feel psychologically safe. They're already burnt out from the pandemic for so many reasons. So why add to their burnout and their stress by making them feel in any way, and most of the time it's not intentional, but not being able to be themselves. It's exhausting not being yourself. That takes a lot of effort to not be yourself. And people will leave you because of it. So that's another big reason, which leads into my third and last reason why it matters more now than ever, is this great resignation, this great reprioritization going on. It has forced people, COVID, to reassess what's important to them and what they want in their lives. And they won't tolerate some of these environments anymore where they don't feel like they can be their whole self and they don't feel psychologically safe in that environment. They will choose to go somewhere else. And they are. And we're seeing it. And I go back to, you know, what candidates are telling us. Look at companies like Google, Amazon, Disney, where traditionally people were banging their doors down to go work for them. It was a privilege to work for these organizations. They're still great organizations, but they're losing people because your name's not enough anymore. People want more, and they want to feel like they belong somewhere and they have a voice. And Apple, I believe it was Apple, put out that message. The CEO put the message out to everybody saying, you know, we're going to go back to a hybrid work environment. And they had an internal revolt. People went crazy because they felt that Apple was not recognizing the differences in people and how different people prefer to work and what works best for different people. So they've had people resign. They've had people just revolting internally and writing letters back to the CEO. These are the reasons why now more than ever, it's not a luxury anymore. It's not a nice to have to be cognitively diverse. It's a must have now for organizations in order to survive.
I would imagine that whether offices and firms are working remote or actually in the office, businesses that are doing either or can still drum up the same cognitive diversity, I would think, right?
Absolutely. And there's so many ways that you can do it. So, you know, I'm not sure with your questioning where you're going with your next question, but it's kind of a good segue into, you know, how do we even know if we're diverse? And like, how do we, in the remote world versus this hybrid versus everybody being on site in companies like hospitality where they have to be on site customer facing. I think, really you have to assess, understand where you are, take a good look at your landscape and audit. I say audit, quote unquote, because it's not that official. It doesn't have to be that, buttoned up stuffy.
Mm-hmm.
It's understanding holistically when you're looking at your diversity programs anyway, you're going to be doing sort of an audit assessment on where you are from a diversity perspective. Many companies have been doing this for years, but also looking at your cognitive diversity, starting to explore what do we do when we're bringing people into the organization? How are we screening? What are we screening for? How are we developing our talent? Are we looking at the right things? How are we putting project teams together? So assessing is really important in your current state. Asking your people, do a pulse check. Ask them the specific questions around how they feel. Are they being heard? Do they feel safe and comfortable bringing up any ideas that they have, no matter how radical or controversial they might be? Can they approach their managers or their other leaders? So doing those pulse checks with your people fairly frequently is another way to gather that information. You need to know what to start doing, stop doing, and continue doing. And you'd be amazed how many managers think they're doing this, but they're not. Harvard, I think it was Harvard Business Review or Harvard University did a study with managers around cognitive diversity and had them rate themselves on how well they think they're creating this psychologically safe environment. And then they had their employees do it, and the results were radically different. So again, assess, and doing these pulse checks is a good way to start that process and that journey.
Awesome. One thing that you mentioned, and it kind of goes into Kevin's question. He's asking, is there a way to know in advance when you're, say, going for an interview? How do you know what? Let's say you have similar businesses. Is there a way to know in advance what their cognitive, if they're cognitively diverse cultures, or if they're not? And does it precede itself? Like, do they have that? Is there a way to know that before you go to that interview?
To interview? Well, you can take a lot of cues from their website. A lot of people go to the website to see what the cultural nuances are. What kind of language are they using? Do they speak to the candidate world at all about what life is going to be like there? So really take a look at their website. That's a good indicator. Go onto their Facebook pages, go onto their LinkedIn profiles, start to see what their look and feel is like, and if there are any of those nuances that you're picking up on. I would also, I'm not a huge reliant on sites like Glassdoor or all these other ones that have reviews, because we know people sometimes go on there and just rant, but that's still another good thing to see, because it's almost like going on and, you've watched a movie or you want to watch a new movie and you're looking at all the reviews. It's still not a bad thing to research. And another thing is to really understand, and I know it's by the time you get to the interview, but it's also to understand and really take a look and listen to what types of questions they're asking you. Does it get to the value and the differences that you bring? Does it sound like an environment where that's going to be encouraged just sheerly in the questions that they're asking you? And you can also reach out to any current employees that are working at that company just through LinkedIn, just as a connection, and say, hey, you know what? Your company sounds awesome. And just, you can ask them a few standard questions. It's not like an interview, but just kind of passively feel them out a little bit and ask some targeted things around life there to get at these cognitive diversity questions. That's what I would do. I've been a candidate many times myself, and I want to know these things up front. So that's a great question.
I love the idea of reading reviews and doing the research, because we all do it. Movies, Amazon, you're buying something on Amazon. How many times do you look at the reviews, right?
That's right. That's right.
So for everybody that is listening, if you have any questions, just a reminder, drop it in the comments. Andrea will be happy to answer those questions. Like the show, please. And if you'd like to know what's up and coming, smash the bell button on YouTube, and this way you'll see what's up and coming. Um, so we're talking about great minds don't think alike, and how that plays a role with cognitive diversity in the organization.
Mhm.
If an organization just simply isn't there,
Yeah. Mhm.
what are some of the top things they can do to liven it up a bit and create that kind of cognitive diversity and culture?
To dial it up, as we say, that's the
Dial it
language
up.
we use when we're coaching our leaders. Dial it up. There's so many things that you could do, and I'll just kind of list them out anyway for people that are listening in. Uh, where it begins is in developing very deep levels of awareness within the organization, and not just with the leadership team. It's across the entire organization. It can't be exclusive to one group. One group can't have these levels of self-awareness and awareness of others' personalities, and nobody else has this. It's just not going to work. So what we do, even in our own practice, also with our client partners, is we will start with the awareness assessments, and these are just behavioral assessment tools that we're using that will fuel these deeper levels of self-awareness. And we usually do start with the leaders because they're casting shadows every day on the organization. So we want them to have this baseline level of self-awareness and awareness of the other personalities so that they know how best to interact with them, and they can speed read personalities and recognize who is it that's in front of me in the moment and what's going to resonate and connect with that person best. So that's where it begins. You can have the greatest program in the world, diversity programs, and without having that level of self-awareness and awareness of others, it's going to go nowhere. You're not doing anything with that information. Providing leadership development opportunities and experiences that will coach, develop, and train them in leading differences. This is not an area that we've seen traditionally a lot of leadership training around. And we're getting a lot more requests on that, and we built that into our training. Again, it starts right at the beginning. That's where it begins, with self-awareness. And then our leadership programs fuel out of that. Design your dream team. Pick your dream team and stack them intentionally with cognitive diversity, different age groups, different experiences, different skill levels, different personalities. And we get the naysayers saying, oh, well, they're not going to fit in, or they're going to not get along with everybody. Well, that becomes the leadership challenge, is to lead those differences and encourage and inspire them and empower them to come out. So I don't buy that anymore when people say, oh, they're not going to get along with this group, we can't have them with that. No. That's a leadership cop out, and it should not ever leave their lips. They need to be armed with the tools to help support them in leading these differences. I also think strengthening and facilitating relationships is critical. You need to be a very active listener. You need to listen, observe, pay attention. Sometimes the leaders have to be quiet and let the teams just duke it out, because the greatest ideas are going to come from that. And being transparent and candid in a very productive way. It's not about just being nice. Being nice isn't fueling psychological safety. You have to just be that active listener and encourage people, to ask questions and be curious. I think that's another way to fuel it. Inspire and create opportunities for people to learn new things, different things, challenge themselves, interact with people that they may not have before. Break down the silos in the organization. Silos stifle innovation. Vulnerability needs to be the new norm, and that is really uncomfortable for a lot of people. Talk about controversial. I can see people squirming as I say that. But again, think about it. When you are vulnerable and you say, you know what, I don't know, I don't have all the answers, or why don't you tell me what you've done in the past? Maybe I can learn something from you. That changes the dynamic of relationships profoundly, and you will get a very different outcome, because when you're vulnerable, other people will feel safe to be vulnerable as well, as long as it's productive. Create that healthy friction. Make sure you've got devil's advocates around. When you are looking at something, exploring a topic, bring in advocates of it and adversaries, people are not going to be in support of it. Mm-hmm. That's how you create this healthy friction, and you start to create learning environments for everyone by introducing the two sides of arguments, not avoiding it. And traditionally, we've avoided it because it's easier. It's more comfortable for everybody. Yep. But again, I go back to arming people with the tools and the support they need to manage effectively that healthy friction between the teams. Again, admit when you don't know something. That's absolutely important. That fuels vulnerability. And don't stifle different. I would say that, like, don't stifle different. We've been doing that for years. Encourage the differences.
But don't just push them aside when they have a difference. Incorporate it.
Right. And I've heard it so many times. Don't put that person on the project team. They're very challenging. They're going to drive everybody crazy. Yeah, but we need that, because otherwise you have groupthink happening. And everybody's, again, we go back to the definition of insanity, right? It's back to the beginning again. We're going to get the same results. No, throw the challenging person in, but give them the guardrails and manage them effectively so that it's a productive environment, not a destructive environment. Mm-hmm. And then build your plans. So make those diversity plans intentional, make them very purposeful, and embed all of these elements of diversity, not just visible diversity, which is what we've traditionally always done. And I'm not ever saying depart from that. That is absolutely critical. But to build a truly holistic plan, you need to embed cognitive diversity with every other element of your program. And then I go back to always do the right thing, no matter the risk. You want to be able to put your head on the pillow every night and know that you did the right thing. And that also fuels relationships. It builds the trust. It creates that vulnerability that people feel that it's okay. And if we make mistakes, we call them out. And Apple's actually very good at that. Their CEO, he's been doing that for years. When they make a mistake, they launch something, it didn't go well, he calls it out. He absolutely calls it out. But what does he do? He calls it out, and then they learn from it, and they share, and they build from there. So it's never meant to be destructive or criticizing or judgmental. It's to throw anybody under the bus. It's always in the spirit of innovation and continuous learning. So learning to celebrate those mistakes. And again, that's another controversial conversation. And I've always heard that from my leaders, is like, oh no, we're going to have to put them on a development plan. And we let's not talk about that mistake. We don't want to make the person feel embarrassed or uncomfortable. No, it's not about making them feel uncomfortable. It's saying, you know what? Here's how this all came to be. We're going to learn from it and do it much better next time. Yeah. So don't be afraid to stand out, and don't be afraid to speak up. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with this one, and I realize it's a lot, but I say beware of the cult inside culture. And we hear this. I had been trained by many HR mentors that have said, you need to make sure to bring people that fit into our culture. That is contrary to everything that we're talking about today. You need to integrate people into your culture, and you are trying to find people that you're not shoving square pegs in round holes, and they're going to be uncomfortable. Right. But you want to make sure that you're not jeopardizing that psychological safety by doing that. Because what you're doing is you're saying you need to fit in and be like we are. And that, again, is going to stifle different. And we want to have that nurtured as much as possible.
So what I'm hearing and taking away from that, and that's amazing information, is push people out of their comfort zone. Mm-hmm. Pair up potentially the diverse with the non-diverse. Mm-hmm. Might mix things up and blend together into something new.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And also I got that leadership doesn't have to be the only ones that are pushing out the diversity, right?
No, it has to be everybody on board. The tone is set, obviously, by the leaders. They have to walk the talk. And I always talk about shadow casting. they're the shadow casters and they are the ones that everybody takes their cue from. However, it doesn't stop there. It needs to be embedded throughout the entire organization. It has to cascade and be a part of the DNA of the organization, is that this is the norm and everybody will contribute to it. And everybody should feel safe to call things out when it's not happening, that they're not going to be ostracized or blacklisted or they're the troublemaker, in the organization. No, we want to embrace that, because that is what is going to continue to fuel our learning and our continuous development. But I do say these things, and I will say it again. We don't just say, okay, go do this, without arming people with the tools and the support and the coaching and the development and the learning to be able to do it effectively. So, don't just go back to your organization tomorrow and say, all right, we're going to put these two together and they hate each other. No. we need to get you there first. So that's why I always say, sit back, do the assessment, understand where you're at, current state, and then understand again, where do we need to stop doing, start doing, continue doing to help get you to where you want to go. It doesn't happen overnight.
So if you put those people together initially that are different, you might need some referees in between those people, right?
Right. But again, it goes back to awareness. And as I said, we use an assessment tool when we use our coaching with individuals also to help them understand how they're showing up, how they're being received by other people. And then what are all these other different personalities and what lens are they seeing things through? Where is the friction happening? Why? And then how do you find that sweet spot with that person? And you can. They just need to understand how. So we have the tools to support the leaders and individuals and teams. We do a lot around team effectiveness, around awareness. But again, that's where it has to begin.
So for management teams out there and businesses today, if they're looking to diversify and change their culture, cognitive diversity is becoming very important in the workplace. But most cases, management teams may not know how to roll it out. So then they need to reach out to HR Soul.
Through you, of course.
And then
important.
And then the secret is to get to know how to pronounce Andrea's last name, which is Cortissoz, right?
All right, exactly.
All right.
You got it.
And you can connect with Andrea. You have her contact information down below, Andrea@hrsoul.com. Phone number is 914-584-8874. Andrea, this was very informative for me. I'm sure a lot of people got great information. I appreciate you being on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to share.
And before we sign off, was there anything else that we didn't touch upon that you might want to connect for people?
No, I just think, when you're taking this away and you're going back to your organizations and you're saying, all right, where do I start? What do I do? Start to engage your stakeholders. You need to do that. Absolutely. If this is going to be a holistic initiative, it can't be a leadership initiative only. So I would pull in senior leaders, get their thoughts on these things, understand that assessment, what's going on. HR are your facilitators. They're your navigators of this. Your key stakeholders, again, around your recruiters, pull them in, start to assess that process. Your managers, employees, polling them. Make sure you're focusing on the right things. You may think you know what you need to focus on, but you'd be amazed what people share when you actually ask the question. Consultants like us, we're the subject matter experts. Why recreate the wheel when we already have the wheel created? We've got best practices. We know what good looks like, and we can help customize for your own world. And then if you've got boards, you need them also for support, for buy-in. If there's any resources that need to be allocated, you need to engage your boards and help them understand that business case for why this needs to happen. And I'll just leave you with that. It's not a nice to have anymore. It's a critical must have for organizations to survive in this new VUCA world that we're living in.
Great way to end that. You've been watching Pharus Global live at 5. We're here every Tuesday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. reach out to us at pharusglobal.com. You can find all of our information there, and you could be the next contestant on the price. No, the next person to join us here on the show. We are accepting new folks all the time. We'd like to tell everybody about your business next. So reach out and let us know if you would be interested. Andrea, thank you very much for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate being invited on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Have a great night. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and all of you have a great night. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.